I found my dream home in what felt like the unlikeliest of places. It wasn't some sleek modern glass structure, no, it was a mansion over a century old with turrets and a wraparound porch. Sure, it was a bit neglected, paint peeling off windows, boarded up the garden, overtaken by wild vines, but I could see its soul. I could feel the history in its very bones. The grand staircase, the stained glass windows, every creaking floorboard had a story to tell. I didn't care how much work it would take. I saw a masterpiece beneath all the decay, and I was determined to bring it back to life. The seller, an old woman who had lived there her whole life, was just relieved that someone still cared about the house. She casually mentioned that the property was part of a new development, but reassured me that my mansion was grandfathered and exempt from their rules. I didn't think much about it. That was my first mistake. For 2 years, I threw myself into restoring the house. Every weekend, every evening after my day job, I was at the mansion. I learned how to plaster walls, refinish hardwood floors, and restore the intricate woodwork hidden under layers of paint. It was exhausting but thrilling. Friends and family thought I was nuts, but slowly the house began to wake up. The peeling gray facade transformed into a stunning Victorian cream with dark green trim. I planted roses and hydrangeas just like in the old photos of the house. It became my sanctuary, my labor of love. I was so proud of what it was becoming, and it felt like nothing could ruin it. Then came the first letter from the Homeowners Association. It arrived on a Tuesday, and I almost tossed it in the trash, thinking it was junk mail. But it wasn't. It was a polite but firm letter telling me that the vintage cream color I'd chosen for the exterior of my house wasn't on their approved list, and my restored mailbox, also not allowed. I laughed. There was no way they could be serious. My house was here long before their cookie-cutter neighborhood even existed. So I wrote back politely explaining that my property was exempt, just as the previous owner had told me. I attached a copy of my deed, which made no mention of any HOA rules or covenants. I figured that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. A week later, another letter came, but this time it was less polite. It was a formal violation notice. Not only did they have a problem with my paint color and mailbox, but now they were also complaining about my unapproved landscaping, my antique-style light fixtures, and the old-fashioned wooden fence I'd painstakingly restored. They even fined me $500. I was furious. I called the number on the letter, and a woman with a voice as sharp as broken glass answered. She told me my property was under their jurisdiction. A recent county ordinance had absorbed all properties in the area into the HOA, she claimed. When I asked to see the ordinance, she became evasive, telling me to just pay the fines and comply. I told her I would do no such thing and hung up. That was when the real battle began. The letters kept coming, each one more aggressive than the last. The fines started to grow. First it was $500, then $1,000, then $5,000. They started finding me for every little detail that made my home unique. They wanted me to replace my antique, wavy, century-old glass windows with standard vinyl ones. They demanded I tear out my beautiful rose garden and plant the same boring shrubs that everyone else had. It felt like they wanted to strip my home of everything that made it special. I hired a lawyer, and he confirmed my worst fear: the HOA was wrong. My property was indeed exempt from their rules. He sent a strongly worded letter to the HOA outlining the legal status of my home, and we thought that would be the end of it. For a few weeks there was silence. I started to breathe again, thinking maybe the nightmare was over. But then came the knock on the door. It wasn't the mailman. It was a county sheriff's deputy. My heart sank. He handed me a thick packet of documents. He explained that the HOA had placed a lien on my property for the unpaid fines, which had now ballooned to a staggering $50,000. The next thing he handed me was a notice of foreclosure. The HOA was trying to seize my home. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My dream home, everything I had worked for, was about to be taken away. The deputy delivered the final chilling message: pay what I owe, or they would get a court order to demolish the house. Demolish it. They were threatening to bulldoze a 100-year-old piece of history because they didn't like the color of the paint. It felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. I had poured everything I had into that house. The thought of it being destroyed was unbearable. The sheriff, to his credit, seemed sympathetic. He quietly suggested that I reach out to the local historical society and the media. He said he was just doing his job, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. That suggestion lit a fire under me. This wasn't just about my house anymore. This was about protecting history, about standing up to the forces that wanted to erase it. I spent the entire night reaching out to reporters, historical preservation groups, and anyone who would listen. The response was overwhelming. The local news station was the first to arrive. They interviewed me on my front porch with my beautifully restored mansion in the background. I told them everything: how I found the house, how I had spent years restoring it, and how the HOA had escalated the situation into a full-blown legal battle. The story aired that evening. The phone started ringing off the hook. People were outraged. The local historical society released a statement condemning the HOA's actions, calling my home a local treasure. The story went viral. A Save the Mansion page appeared online and thousands of people showed their support. The HOA's Facebook page was flooded with angry comments. The pressure was mounting. And then the unthinkable happened. The HOA, which had been relentless in their pursuit of me, went completely silent. Their lawyer stopped responding to my lawyer's calls. A few days later, a formal letter arrived, not from the HOA, but from the county attorney's office. The letter stated that after a review, they had determined the HOA's claim over my property was not valid. The supposed ordinance they had cited didn't even exist. They had been bluffing. The lien was removed and the county launched an investigation into the HOA's practices. A week later, the HOA president, the woman with the sharp voice, resigned. It felt like a victory, but it was a sobering one. I had fought not just for my house, but for the idea that history, character, and individuality shouldn't be erased by greed or control. As I stood on my porch a few weeks later looking out at my house, I couldn't help but smile. The vintage cream paint glowed in the afternoon sun. The roses were in full bloom. I had won, but it wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who has ever felt small in the face of bureaucracy or power. The house had stood for over 100 years, surviving storms and time. Now it had survived an HOA, and I knew in my heart that it was here to stay. Thank you for watching, for all your support during this journey. It meant the world to me. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more updates on the mansion. See you next time.